Get ready for the book. Alrighty, well, this is the book. Here we go. That's the book. All things considered, it might be the best book I've ever read. Nothing but non-stop, pulse-pounding, block-busting action, for sure. I found it difficult to not read. I felt very bad, like drained. It was a lot like listening to early Swans, if you've ever heard of the band Swans. It pumps you up, but it also wears you out. It's not one of those books that you can read once. And so firmly entrenched in the Western canon of literature that there is a lot of allusions in this book that I didn't understand until I clicked onto a Yale course. The book is written in such a way that it requires you read it at a painfully slow clip. I was reading it at 30 pages an hour. It was so lyrical and so vivid, the events, that if I went any faster, I would be missing pivotal things. It seems like every other sentence, something new is bound to happen. There's so much action that people are freaking dying off screen. It has the effect of kind of drifting mindlessly in the world, at the effect of whatever the strongest will is, you are kind of flowing along with that, in the same way that the kid in the story doesn't necessarily want to be this violent character, but that's what everyone's doing, so that's what he's doing. All the things in it are mega outlandish, which is surprising because it's a historically accurate book. It's taken after some guy from the time period who was in Blanton's gang, a real gang of professional scalp hunters in Mexico. And it kind of goes note for note as to how things went down in that band. McCarthy, I think, famously does not use quotation marks. The lack of concentration marks makes it seem like you're across from somebody at a campfire and he's telling you the story. And it also adds to the unpredictability of things, because the next sentence might be someone saying something, so you have to consciously imagine it. So yeah, I guess it does add to that. I didn't realize how important it is in every book to tune yourself into the flow of the storytelling, because it's absolutely a prerequisite before you enjoy this book to tune into McCarthy's pacing. I guess it's not always so obvious how the need to get into the flow is, and sometimes that might be what people say when they mean that the pacing was off or it wasn't well written, those, kind of nebulous terms that people say. The unpredictability of it is coupled by just the sheer amount of action, to where I think that if they took this book and chopped it up into a TV show, they could literally go chapter by chapter, because so much happens in each chapter that if you gave every event air to express itself naturally as it would in real life, you could easily make it a 30-minute block show with no commercial time at all on Netflix. And it would be the most badass show of all time. But it will never get green-lit, because it's not only is it too violent, but it's a racist wet dream. I mean, they're just going around scalping brown people. In the violence in the story, there's zero self-reflection, which I think they spoke on in the Yale review. Beyond that, there's just not a single word of cowardice, of fear. The brutality itself exists devoid of any existential repercussion save your own death. It has the effect of being a force of nature in itself, like the violence of two asteroids colliding, or of volcanoes erupting in some era before vegetation. It's just a thing that exists Lots of words are in Spanish, lots of stuff about the Southwest and vegetation. I live in the Sonoran Desert, so I missed a lot of it still. After a while, I was like, I'm gonna just stop researching what this is. I don't need to know. I'm just gonna enjoy the ride. But the imagery is very artful, and it's vivid, super vivid, and beautiful images that he makes of like really heinous events. This is from after he and his whole filibuster army cats got straight massacred by the Comanches in Mexico. After he got caught, I think in Chihuahua or whatever. They're parading him throughout the town. There was a bazaar in progress, a traveling medicine show, a primitive circus. They passed stout willow cages clawed with vipers, with great lime green serpents from some more southerly latitude, or beaded lizards with their black mouths wet with venom. A reedy old leper held up handfuls of tapeworms from a jar for all to see, and cried out his medicines against them, and they were pressed about by other rude apothecaries and by vendors and merchants until all came at last before a trestle whereon stood a glass carboy of clear mezcal. In the container, the hair afloat and eyes turned upwards, in a pale face sat a human head. They dragged him forward with shouts and gestures. "Mire, mire," they cried. He stood before the jar, and they urged his consideration of it, and they tilted it around so that the head should face him. It was Captain White, lately at war among the heathen. The kid looked into the drowned and sightless eyes of his old commander. He looked about at the villagers and the soldiers, their eyes all upon him, and he spat and wiped his mouth. "He ain't no kin to me," he said. That's so baller. I'm gonna get to the spoilery parts and the things that I kind of want to spoil about this book, and it's helpful if you're going to read this book to know what's going to happen in the book, so that you can read deeper into what's being said, so that you don't miss certain things. Like, I'm gonna miss a lot. I'm skipping over a lot when I tell you about what's going on. I'm practically not telling you anything about this book. Regardless, if you still want to get a version read, this is the point. Okay, so go. So, okay, the kid is born in Tennessee. He runs away from his pops when he's like 14, and he just kind of goes and rambles about America, just going like south and west. And he starts getting into fights and like gets shot, gets stitched up, and he goes down to Galveston, Texas, or somewhere, Nacogdoches, whatever. He goes somewhere. He meets the judge, a big white albino looking cat who grows no hair. And he goes into a tent revival where the crowd has been with this guy for 2 weeks with the same preacher. He goes in there and accuses the preacher of raping and murdering a girl, and the whole congregation seeks to kill him dead on the spot. And they go into the bar and they see the judge there, and he's like, "When did you last see the guy?" And he's like, "I never met the guy before in my life." And everyone just laughs it off and buys a drink. The kid gets into a fight with a guy with no ears and like branded face. His name is Toad Vine. He's pretty awesome. Just total like crimey type cat. He gets into a super fight with him, but then they become pals. He and Toad Vine, they go to like take some other guy out. They set the door to his hotel room on fire to see if he's awake or not. His room is burning, and he opens the door, and then Toad Vine and him fight to the death. Toad Vine kills him, and they run away, and the whole thing is on fire. And the kid just runs to get his mule, and the judge watches him and smiles as he skips town. All that crap happens in the first chapter, like action-packed, no slowing down. So I'm just gonna like burn through this. He meets a crazy hermit. It's kind of crazy. He cuts up a Spanish guy in a bar. Some army people want him in their army because they're gonna go and continue the Spanish-American War. And they go down there and get their crap pushed in by some Comanches, and everyone's dying, and it's super gruesome. But he goes into a village, and in the village is like a bunch of dead people in a church. He goes into a room, and on the wall of this home is a picture of the Four of Cups tarot card. Now, I don't think that it's the same image as the Rider-Waite version, but I think that image is very helpful for understanding a broader part of the book, which still had me scratching my head when it was over. I was like, well, what does it mean? Because for Jackson, in the future, his fortune makes a lot of sense kind of off the rip. But for the kid, I had a lot of trouble deciphering that one. And then he also gets bit by a vampire while he tries to sleep, and the kid was like, oh, that means something. Which again, didn't make too much sense until like I had to look at, some explanations of what the judge is and what the kid represents and all that stuff. After I understood that, then it made sense. Okay. So the kid gets thrown in jail, meets Toadvine again, and then the judge and John Joe Blanton, who runs the gang of scalpers, they buy up the Van Diemenlander and Toadvine, the kid, they all go out, they join the gang. And this is kind of where just the violence just goes and goes. Somewhere around this time, they pick up like a juggler, like an entertainer family in Mexico. And on a camp night, they ask for like their fortunes. And the black Jackson, there's two, there's a white Jackson and a black Jackson. The black Jackson draws the Fool card. It's essentially the greatest video game attribute is luck. And Jackson is the most badass character. Like he kills the white Jackson with a single swipe of a Bowie knife the size of a machete. He shoots some guy just off the cuff in the most like Western style possible. Critical hits. The guy's rolling 20s the entire book. I think he falls off a cliff, so very like the Fool, 100%. I was like, okay, this makes sense. But the kid, I couldn't understand. But also during one of those camp nights, the judge, he's feeding these bats with his hand from his own blood. He's feeding the bats. And the judge is all about war. Like he's all about asserting war. Like if you win in battle, that means that you're justified. All the judge's talks is kind of like what you freaking read the book for, because he has a crazy kind of philosophy that just allows for power to exert itself. And this, like I said, like the way that violence exists in this book, like a force of nature, devoid of any need for conscience or reflection, is reflected in the way that the judge sees violence and war as this thing which is intrinsically right by virtue of its persistent existence, by the fact that it alone remains, or that it is like a decider between the two people. The two men have an issue in a duel. The duel itself cannot be wrong, regardless of who wins or dies. It's like the perfect scientific method or something. I don't know. They killed too many people, and now everyone wants them out in Mexico. So they head north and they go to the Yuma Ferry. They see that the Yuma Ferry takes a lot of money, so they're like, all right, I guess we're taking over this place. Yeah, they like mafia control from this place, and it's just like there's their ferry now. But they end up getting they get decimated by the Yuma Indians. And that's where the gang pretty much gets busted apart and only a few people are left. The ex-priest wants the kid to shoot the judge because the judge is a problem. But the kid doesn't kill the judge, he just kind of like doesn't help him or something. And the kid also has these chances to kill the judge, but he decides not to. And the kid is a dead shot. He's making rifle shots with his pistol, And the kid is good. It's when it's his life on the line. But besides that, he won't just do violence just to do it. He's either in with the gang or he decides to just be, a pacifist about it. But the judge doesn't like that about him. That's the judge's main gripe with this kid. He keeps saying, like, you disappoint me with how you refuse to engage in war, which clearly he's built for. He ends up at the end, when it's all said and done, to be like a very solid snake in the way that he's anti-war and he doesn't want to have anything to do with it. At the end of the book, he's no longer the kid, he's the man, and he ends up shooting some kid who's all about war, but he's stupid. He's like low-key asking for it, so he shoots the kid. Yeah. He goes to a bar somewhere, and there's the judge looking as ageless as ever. They have this final conversation where he pretty much is like, you really should have killed me, man. I don't know why you didn't kill me all this time. Because essentially, all that the judge is, as the exponent of this Highlander-esque religion, where I guess there can only be one, the kid refused it, which I think is what the Four of Cups is all about. Him refusing that destiny or something at least close to it. So the judge rapes and kills him, the end. I didn't understand what happened when it was over, and I'm not even gonna try to get into the epilogue because that's beyond my pay grade too. 5 outlaw stars out of 5. That's really all I got. Really is too deep for me. I was reading it like I was reading a blockbuster Western, and then at the end it was suddenly like way deeper than I had been reading for. And I was left kind of like holding my popcorn like, what did I just watch? Definitely check out the Yale reviews, check out this guy's series. If you haven't read this book, freaking read it. That's yeah, I mean, there's no need to drag it on. Read it.